Okay, I found another story for you guys. I was doom scrolling as always, and I found this story. She starts her post with, "I'm a 28-year-old female. I have one older sister, and my whole life I was the one my family never fully believed, until the day I found a shoebox in my late mother's closet that explained everything." So, growing up, my sister Claire was everything my parents wanted in a child, and I was everything they didn't know what to do with. Like, Claire was quiet and agreeable, and got good grades and smiled at the right times. And I was loud and opinionated, and asked too many questions. And my parents spent most of my childhood looking at me like I was a problem they hadn't figured out how to solve yet. Every time something went wrong in the house, it found its way back to me somehow. If something was broken, I broke it. If there was tension at dinner, I caused it. And Claire would just sit there looking sympathetic, and my parents would sigh and send me to my room. And I grew up genuinely believing that I was the difficult one, that something about me was just fundamentally too much, and that belief followed me all the way into adulthood. When I was 22, I moved to another city, partly for work, and partly because I needed to breathe. And my relationship with my parents became distant and strained, and whenever I called home, the conversations felt short and cold, and I could never fully understand why. Like I was trying to reach them, and there was always this wall I couldn't get through. And eventually I started calling less and less, because every conversation left me feeling worse than before. My mom passed away 2 years ago after a short illness, and I flew home for the funeral, and it was the first time I had seen my family in almost 3 years. And the grief was complicated, because I was mourning her, but I was also mourning the relationship we never really had. And at the will reading, I found out she had left the house and the majority of her savings to Claire, and left me a small amount that felt more like an afterthought than a decision. And I won't lie, that hurt in a way I didn't have words for. After the funeral, Claire told me I was welcome to go through Mom's things and take whatever I wanted to keep before the house was sorted. So I went through her room on my own one afternoon, and I was going through the top shelf of her closet when I found a shoebox pushed to the very back. And I pulled it down thinking it was old photos or keepsakes. And I opened it, and inside were letters, a whole stack of them. And when I looked at the handwriting on the envelopes, my heart just stopped completely. They were letters I had written to my mom, cards for her birthday, letters I had sent when I first moved away, trying to reconnect with her, letters I had poured my heart into and sent and never got a real response to. And they were all still in their envelopes, which meant my mom had never opened them. And that alone would have been devastating enough. But then I looked more carefully, and I noticed that every single envelope had been opened and resealed. Someone had opened every one of my letters before my mom ever saw them, and they had been put back carefully enough that you wouldn't notice unless you were looking. And I sat on the floor of my mom's closet, and I went through every single one. And by the time I got to the bottom of the box, I was shaking. Because tucked underneath my letters was a separate folded piece of paper, and when I opened it, it was in Claire's handwriting, and it was a list. A literal list of things she had told my mom about me that were not true. Things like I had borrowed money and never paid it back, that I had said cruel things about my mom to mutual friends, that I had told people the reason I moved away was because I couldn't stand being around my family. None of it was real. None of it had ever happened. And she had been drip-feeding these lies to my mother for years. I sat in that room for a long time before I did anything. And then I took photos of every single letter and the list. And I put the box exactly where I found it, and I went home. And that night I barely slept, because I kept thinking about all those phone calls that felt cold, and all the walls I couldn't get through, and my mom dying without us ever being close, and knowing now that it wasn't because of anything I had actually done. It was because my sister had spent years quietly making sure my mother saw the worst possible version of me that didn't even exist. I called my aunt the next morning, my mom's sister, because she was someone who had always been fair to both of us, and I trusted her judgment. And I told her what I found, and I sent her the photos, and she was silent for a long time. And then she said, "Oh my God, I always thought something wasn't right." And she asked me what I wanted to do, and I told her I wanted to do it properly, because I wasn't going to blow this up and have Claire deny everything, and make me look like the dramatic one again. My aunt suggested a family gathering. There were a few cousins and an uncle, who all needed to be there to hear about the estate anyway. So about 2 weeks later, we all got together at my aunt's house, and Claire showed up looking completely relaxed. And I just watched her hug everyone and laugh, and I kept my face completely neutral the whole time. When everyone had settled, My aunt said she had something important she needed to share with the family, and she put the photos up on her laptop and walked everyone through them one by one. The letters, the envelopes that had been opened and resealed, and then the list in Claire's handwriting. And the room went so quiet, I could hear my own breathing. Claire tried to speak twice, and both times nothing came out. And then she said it wasn't what it looked like, and my uncle asked her very calmly what it did look like then, and she had absolutely nothing. And I watched her face go from confident to desperate in about 30 seconds, and I just felt numb. Not triumphant, not angry, just numb. The conversation that followed lasted a long time, and things were said that I don't think that family will ever fully recover from. And Claire left before it was over, and I haven't heard from her since. And the estate is currently being reviewed by a lawyer, because what she did likely influenced my mother's decisions in ways that were not legal. She ends her post with this: "I spent my entire childhood thinking I was the problem, and it turns out I was just the target, and those are two very different things." I keep coming back to that line because there are so many people who grew up being told they were too much, or too difficult, or the dramatic one, and they spent years believing it. And sometimes the truth doesn't come in a conversation or an apology. Sometimes it comes from a shoebox on the top shelf of a closet, and it's still the truth, and it still counts. Drop it in the comments if this one got you. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next one.